one has not been easy. Interruptions and technical difficulties, which I think means that this is a good one. So the subject today is the 1500s, a most notable time period, second only to the first century. 1500s, we saw the emergence of all the different groups of Christianity, as well as innumerable Bibles. So let's take a look. So it's together sort of a summary timeline. 1517, Martin Luther writes the 95 Theses, marking the beginning of the Reformation. But we note that the church was already corrupted at this time, which is what allowed for this. If the church hadn't been corrupted first, then nobody would have gone along with it. 1521, the Pope excommunicates Luther. He starts translating the Bible into German. 1525, the Reform movement splinters. We get the Anabaptists. In 1534, King Henry VIII breaks with the Pope and establishes his own church. 1536, Calvin publishes the Institutes of the Christian Religion. I myself am non-institutionalized. And that same year, Tyndale is murdered for translating the Bible into early modern English. 1541, the first Swedish translation is published. 1545, the Council of Trent, initiating the Counter-Reformation. 1547, John Knox establishes Protestantism in Scotland. An interesting place. 1579, Faustus moves to Poland and establishes the Unitarian movement. On the Catholic side, we have Ignatius of Loyola, founding the Jesuits in 1539, and Pope Paul III officially recognizes them in 1540. This all leads to lots of bloodshed and chaos. Every government has its own religion now, and the 30 Years' War begins, involving much of Europe, and a struggle between Catholicism, Calvinists, Lutherans, lots of other people caught in the crossfire. Oh, and that time we also have all these Bibles coming out, which I'm sure you're all well aware of. You know, we got Tyndale, and then Matthews, Cadbury, not the Cadbury Bible, something like that. We got the Bishop's Bible, the Great Bible, the Geneva Bible, and finally the King James Bible. But what was before this era? What was the Bible of the Millennial Kingdom? Well, the oldest English Bible we have in full, obviously parts here and there throughout the ages, but the first real deal is the Wycliffe Bible, at the end of the 1300s, which was translated from the older Vulgate and infuriated the Pope so much that they had his bones dug up 44 years after he died and burned. So I think we can say that by 1428, things had already gone very wrong. But in the same time, the Canterbury Tales is published, 1392, which is about a pilgrimage a bunch of people are on. And I do wonder if that pilgrimage is an allusion to the Millennial Kingdom. Perhaps the pilgrimage that needed to be made during the Millennial Kingdom. And now that we're post-Millennial Kingdom, the pilgrimage that we must each make to the kingdom. And it contains references to or allusions from around 48 books of the Bible, which are from the Latin Vulgate version. So it's definitely a very Christian text. Lots of theories about it, but, So I think the only real candidate for the Bible during the Millennial Kingdom is the Vulgate. which I don't claim is perfect, but that's what we had up until the chaos and division of the 1500s. And naturally, during that same time, it was, refined. In 1592, making the Clementine Vulgate. The Catholic Bible of that era was the Douay-Rheims, which was, the New Testament was completed in 1582. But the whole thing wasn't published until about 1609. And it was, I think, too good because they had to revise it in 1752 and added such things as the globe. So, can't really hardly get the original version of the Douay-Rheims anymore. If you're going to buy one, there's only, it's quite an expense. So you have to get the revised version. So what are we to make of the 1500s? It was a time of tremendous chaos and division in the church, which we still suffer to this day. So I don't think there's any doubt that it happened. Maybe the details, I'm sure, are not entirely truthful, but whatever the case, it happened because we still have these institutions and divisions to this very day. But we also see with the Bible that there was suddenly an importance of having a Bible in every language. Why was this not the case during the millennial kingdom? Why was it not until 1500 that this was important? So, how was Bible teaching done during the millennial kingdom? Well, I think a leading theory is that there was a legitimate priest class, perhaps better called saint class of kings and priests, the saints, who taught during that time. So they didn't need to have a perfect text in every language, because he had essentially perfect teachers in interpretation who knew every language, being so filled with the Holy Spirit. So we have some iconography here. I think it's St. Bartholomew, St. Andrew, and maybe Thomas there. So they each have a book. They're teaching. So those are my thoughts on that. So, putting this together into the bigger puzzle. This slide's from my variety show number 1. We noticed these 700 years, these phantom years, and the kind of thought has been that they were added to the calendar. But I think a more likely explanation is that these are 700 or perhaps 1,000 years that were whitewashed over, right? If you have the millennial kingdom, you need to cover it up. So they would have just deleted the real history and substituted their own. So I don't think there were 700 added years. I think there were 700 covered up years. And here is my proposed timeline as of right now. Of course, subject to much change. I do want to hear what everyone thinks. So we have world conquest beginning, 66 to 70 AD. And by 76, possibly as late as 300 AD, the kingdom is established. We don't know how long it took. So 1066 to 1300 AD, 1,000 years later, I would say the kingdom ascends, lifts out of this world to allow for this final age we're in. So then 1076 to 1500 AD, Satan is released. I don't know if there was some period between the millennial kingdom rising and Satan rising. They might not have been the same day. So I think it's possible we had a few hundred years where Satan's minions were allowed to set up shop, but Satan himself may not have yet risen. But certainly by the 1500s, the satanic conquest is in full swing. The church is just being decimated. The corruption had already started, but it wasn't until the 1500s that it was really set in stone. The battle was lost, if you will. We also get the globe model coming onto the scene. And the other question is regarding the mud flood. Now, if you remember from my 2 rebirths, 3 ages, and a little season video, I noticed that the word for the new age was rebirth, which I likened, of course, to baptism. Also means rebirth. Well, baptism means immersion, but it symbolizes a rebirth. So I noticed then that we have the initial age, pre-flood, then the baptism of water, like John the Baptist, brings us into the post-flood age, the age of the nations, which ends in the baptism of fire, baptism of spirit and fire of Jesus, when the millennial kingdom is born into the world, and bringing in the little season, we have the baptism of mud, which, unlike the baptism of water or fire, does not get you clean. And so we see here the All Saints flood of 1570. This is an image of it. Pretty crazy. So I think the 1500s are the likely time of Satan being released, mud flood, church being destroyed. It all happens, right? But I think there was an intervening period of a couple hundred years where it wasn't the millennial kingdom, but Satan hadn't been released either. A sort of pregnancy period, if you will. Let me end with this. This is from the Wycliffe Bible Modern Spellings version. For there is no privy thing which shall not be opened, neither hid thing which shall not be known and come into open. For nothing is covered that shall not be showed, neither hid that shall not be known. And our community, God bless you all. Such a blessing. The truth is pouring forth. You know, we had it starting, a decade or so ago, but it's really these last year or two that it's reaching what I think is something of a maturity. Those who will fall away mostly have fallen away and gotten caught up in whatever gate they could not get through. And our community is so great. It's such a blessing. Thank you all for listening. And I really want to hear what everyone thinks. Let's keep digging and refining, sharpening and purifying. Because the truth is, it makes a difference, The zeitgeist is a real thing. So even just us discovering more and more truth, I think has an effect beyond normal, natural means. It has a supernatural effect. And when the light is really shining. So let's be that city on a hill. See you next time.